Hey, I'm excited to be here for VGA's anniversary party. This is a small piece of a lecture that I do on the Ohio Regional Archives, but I also do a much larger one on the hierarchy of research archives in Ohio. But I wanted to just feature this today as we do little short introductory topics and topics of interest, something that you might not have known about or thought about. So I'm just going to talk about the regional archives today, but I hope you learned something new. My name's Kelli Bergheimer, and I'm really glad to be here today. So let's start with, are you a Buckeye or did your ancestors go through Ohio? So many of us, including myself, were born, raised here, lived here our whole lives. And so some of us have ancestors who have been here for generations. Some of us have ancestors who have kind of gone passing through. And so there are a number of different migration routes that are shown here. And obviously the migration routes vary based on the years that you're talking about or the decades you're talking about. Sometimes they're based on land routes, sometimes waterways, the canal system, the lake, the Ohio River. So it just depends. But we have a lot of migration through Ohio. So I want to introduce you to a collection of records and locations and archives that are really important to your research, particularly if you're looking at early Ohio. So do you have to go to the archives? Well, I mean, what can you do in person? What can you do on the internet? Those are the age-old questions. And most of these regional archives are housed within universities. And if you can, you want to go. Remember, our boundaries changed in Ohio over time, and so records might be in an unexpected place. So there are three things that I use every day. The first one is an interactive map, and you can just Google interactive map of Ohio County formation, and you'll see year to year to year what the state of Ohio looked like and where the county boundaries were and where the federal lands were. And so this is an 1803 map. Excuse me. And so let's say your ancestors were in currently what's known as Columbus, Ohio, where I live. Well, Franklin County went from the Columbus, Ohio area all the way up to Lake Erie. So maybe Franklin County in 1810 wasn't necessarily the same place it was in 1803. And so the county boundaries changed. So it's really important to kind of know time and place. There are two other things that I use all the time. One of them is Kip Sperry's book about genealogical research in Ohio. I have the second edition, but he just released a third edition in the last year sometime. And that's available at the Ohio Genealogical Society. You could find that book. The other one is Ohio Towns and Townships. And so it's a location guide. It's also available at the Ohio Genealogical Society. And this book will tell you, let's say you have a family Bible and it just says Richland, Ohio. And you're like, Richland, Ohio. Well, is that Richland, the county, Richland, the township, Richland, the city? How many Richland townships are there? So it might help you kind of narrow down where your ancestors were. So let's talk for a few minutes about the Ohio Regional Archives, because there are some great gems here that you might not be aware of. So Ohio has a regional archive system that is greatly housed within the universities. Now, this is a picture of the archive in Wright State University that's in Dayton or Montgomery County, Ohio. We've got several different regional archives. Bowling Green State University, Ohio University has recently moved most of their collection to Columbus, to the Ohio History Center, but it's been dispersed a little bit. Wright State University is in Dayton. That's the one pictured here. University of Cincinnati in Cincinnati or Hamilton County has a regional archive. Western Reserve Historical Society in Cleveland area is also a regional archive, and the University of Akron and the Youngstown Historical Center in Youngstown. So let me just show you on a map. Maybe you can get an idea of the parts of Ohio that are covered by different archives. And you can see the source at the bottom of the page here if you want to go look at this map for yourself. Just keep in mind that that light blue southeastern Ohio section that's covered by Ohio University is now mostly housed in the Ohio History Center in Columbus, in Franklin County, so in the center of the state. Some archives still remain at Ohio University. But in general, the state of Ohio has these regional archives that are repositories for things that are unusual collections, things that don't necessarily fit one county versus another. Sometimes they are specific to a region. Specific to a waterway, specific to an industry. And so let's talk about some of the great things that you might find at these different Ohio regional archives. So what kind of unique collections exist? Well, let's talk first about Bowling Green State University, and that's in the northwest part of Ohio, just south of Toledo. And one of their major collections is the historical collection of the Great Lakes. Now, if you know anything at all about the Great Lakes, that covers a lot of territory, lots of states, but they do have a collection there of Great Lakes history. So even if you don't have Ohioans involved in the Great Lakes, you might still want to check out this collection. All kinds of photos, videos, volumes of things related to the Great Lakes, but they also have lots of other material, periodicals and pamphlets and other things available. So that's at Bowling Green State University, about 45 minutes or half hour, 45 minutes south of Toledo. Wright State University, there are some very unique collections here, and I visited this archive a number of years ago. And one thing to keep in mind, it's at a university, so anytime you go to a college, you got to be careful where you park. Don't park in the faculty parking. Pay attention to all the signage. Most of these archives are within their library system, in their main library, and they might have a small location on site and more held off-site. And that is the case with the Wright State University Archive. They have a small amount of things in their collection locally, and then they have a retrieval service. So if there are particular things that you want to look at while you're there, you might want to check with them ahead of time so that they have a few days to go and retrieve those records for you. Let me just point out one of the great things that they have. Let's say two of the great things. The children's home records. Sometimes we have trouble when we have orphans or we have children who were displaced from their original families. And so the children's home record collection that they have at Wright State University includes a number of different adjoining and related counties. Also, the quadrennial enumeration. You might not be aware, but Ohio had a census of men over the age of 21 years old residing in a county, and they were used to determine voting districts, and they were taken every 4 years from 1803 to 1911. And prior to 1863, those enumerations recorded only white men. So if you're looking for someone in early Ohio and you're trying to figure out where they were, those quadrennial enumerations, those 4-year censuses might be really helpful to you. And Wright State has a collection of those. And before you're thinking, are they digitized? Well, they weren't last time I looked, but you never know. Keep an eye out for that. The University of Cincinnati Archives has 3 major collections that have online indices, and so I've noted those here for Hamilton County, Ohio wills, Hamilton County, Ohio citizenship records, and then Cincinnati birth and death records. So they've got a number of other collections there, but those are 3 that I wanted to point out. Um, Particularly Cincinnati was a part of Ohio where people migrated through quite often. Either they floated down the Ohio River from Fort Pitt in Pittsburgh and landed at various points along the southern Ohio border, or ultimately maybe were heading to Hamilton County, to Cincinnati, or points beyond. So a lot of my ancestors floated down the Ohio River and ended up in Cincinnati and then worked their way north from there. Many of them were immigrants searching for better life, land, farming, they were land granted, perhaps from Revolutionary War service, things like that. So a lot of our ancestors might have gone through University of Cincinnati archive, and so you might find records there. The Ohio University Archive, as I mentioned before, has a collection at their university, but mostly it's been dispersed to the Ohio History Center. They do have some specific record collections that are pretty fascinating if you have Southeastern Ohio roots. They do have some family histories, family papers, first families, and then marriage indices for the counties that are in that region, most of the counties in that region. And they have some church records and business records as well. So you want to make sure to to check out that set of records. Check first at the Ohio History Center to see if that's where they've been placed recently. Youngstown has some great immigrant records, and they do have a focused collection documenting industry, labor, urban living, and ethnic history in northeastern Ohio. And they have a special ethnic newspaper collection. And I also have a list here of all of the, well, not all, but some of the major things that you can find related in chronicling America. And so there are lots of different immigrant groups who came to that part of Ohio. Some worked on the Great Lakes, some worked in railroads. And so you'll find some of your families might have gone from Buffalo, New York to Erie, Pennsylvania to Cleveland, Ohio, you know, kind of working their way west, working on the railroads. So it's a very common thing to have a lot of immigrant ancestry into Cleveland. And so this archive has some great resources for that. And the University of Akron has a number of things unique to them. The rubber industry collection is there. Also, the Ohio Canal Collection. And so if you have anyone who was migrating in Ohio or working on the canals, either building them or transporting goods and services, the Ohio Canal records are really great there. Also, they have the Akron and Summit County collections, and they have Marauder archives as well. So if you're interested in any sort of flights, airplanes, particular to military, if you're interested in canals, you can even go and see canal locks that are still there in that area. But the Goodrich Tire Company was there, and that's why they have the rubber industry collection. Western Reserve Historical Society has several very large and thorough collections. They have the Crawford Auto Aviation Museum collection. And so lots of memorabilia, classic cars, all kinds of interesting and historically significant aircraft related to the shores of Lake Erie, lots of military trained on Lake Erie. And so we also have in the Western Reserve Historical Society archives, lots of published resources, including 10,000 linear feet of personal papers. I love that. It's probably much more than that now. I think that stat was from a couple years ago. But what you will find at the Western Reserve Historical Society is a wide range of things related to that part of Ohio, that northeastern part of Ohio. You do want to definitely check before you go. They have had some fire, water. They had a situation there where they've displaced a lot of the records and preserved them while they're doing some repairs to the building. So you definitely want to check on that before you take a trip and plan to go. So please come visit Ohio. We would love to see you. We have lots of unique collections, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the birthday and anniversary celebration today. Thank you so much.